Hey guys, hope you guys had a great weekend. Mike's in the office today, but I'm actually doing the call, so the usual caveats apply. Because I don't do these that often, I don't monitor the questions as well as he does. So if you ask a question and I don't answer it, it's probably because I didn't see it. I'm not ignoring you.
I'll jump in.
You'll jump in? Okay.
Yeah.
Today's kind of a hodgepodge, so we're going to cover a few different things. So we may end up being finished a little bit early. Today, what I really want to share with you is a couple of problems that when I talk to guys, I find that they wrestle with in the meetings. And so I want to kind of talk about those, maybe give you some ideas on how to overcome those things. And so this call will be part theory, but it'll also be part kind of a practical talk that you may end up having with some clients, depending on whether or not they have some of the things that we're going to talk about. The first thing I want to do, though, is kind of walk through the 5-minute moneymaker. You all got that on Wednesday, and so this one's talking about the fact that most people are underinsured when it comes to their homes. And so that's great for us because we have that property casualty checklist that people can take back and have their property casualty agent kind of walk them through what their coverage is and isn't so that they can figure out where the gaps might be. And that's something that nobody else does. It's something that really sets you apart from other advisors. And what you find, or what I found, is that plus the electronically filing of the medical power of attorney really hits home with a lot of people. All of the topics in the 21 point checklist, those non-financial, are very powerful, but those two really resonate with people in the sense that it's something that they can take back. It's something that they get. It's not just a conversation where we're telling them to go out and do something. It's also something that they have that's tangible, that they can kind of feel and see and touch, that they realize that if they come on board, they get. So don't sell it short. Make sure you're good at that topic and you're using that property casualty checklist. On Thursday, you also got the 5Q breakdown, and there we were listening to a little piece of the beneficiary script. And so one of the things I'll tell you that you may not realize when you listen to the tape is this guy does get that client. But there are some things that he could have done better. So again, don't just, it's about a 10-minute tape. Don't just speed through it and listen to it once. Go back and make sure that you're using these things to kind of improve your beneficiary script. Put yourself in that situation. See what you would have done. Go back and practice your beneficiary script, or listen to a tape of you doing it and see if you can take what you learn here and improve your own meetings. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about today is something that we talked about last week, and I bring it up again because I've seen a lot of it. And so what you're looking at here is kind of a snippet of the brochure from something called the AXA Structured Capital Strategies product. So this is a variable annuity put out by AXA, and Jerry talked about this last week. This is one of those very products that has a 10% buffer on the downside and a 10% cap on the upside. Now, this isn't the only product out there like that. There are a few. There aren't many, but this is the one that I see that you guys are running into most often. Probably in the last 3 or 4 months, when you guys send in the Morningstar reports, I've seen 6 or 7 of these, so quite a few. So you're going to start to run into it more and more often. And when you send it in, you're going to know if you're one of those people, those 6 or 7 people that have sent it in, you know that there's no Morningstar report that you're going to get back with this. So typically what happens is you'll send in Morningstar requests for they'll have some ETFs, some mutual funds, a few stocks, and then they might have this as part of the portfolio. And so you'll get a Morningstar report for the ETFs, the stocks, the mutual funds, but you don't get a Morningstar for this. Now, if you've ever run into this, and we've worked on this, if you're one of the 6 or 7 that ran into this and you didn't get a Morningstar back from me, you also know that I told you that just because you don't get a Morningstar report doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation about this product. So what I kind of want to do is take the next few minutes to kind of walk you through my take on this product and give you some ideas on how you would cover this with a client.
Hey, and before you do that, Jeff, can I ask them a question?
Sure.
So what if you guys run across an FIA? So they were sold an FIA. Do you ignore that product? What do you do with that product? So it's not one, these are a prospect and they have an FIA. What do you do with it? I got 3 questions and all of them are kind of right. Well, Mark says, see if they understand what they bought. How many people understand what they bought with an FIA, do you think? The way other people sell it? None, exactly, Nicholas. None, Mark. So you need to call either Matt or Jerry at ECA and say, listen, I'm doing a 21-point checklist. Here's the product. What's the problems with it? Are there any perfect investments out there, guys? No. So the thing is, the FIA has problems too, and did the advisor that sell that go through all the problems with the FIA that they sold? No. So you treat the FIA, even though we sell FIAs, even though we sell assets under management, you still need to do the assets under management script. You still need to do the FIA script with the client. So how can we sell AUM and how can we sell FIAs if during a 21-point checklist we hammer it? Are we hammering the AUM? Are we hammering the FIA? No. What are we hammering? The advisor, Mark, right, their guy. You got it. No, not Larry, not fees and spreads. Guys, if it's just the fees and spreads, what can they do? They can go back to their guy and do what? He'll say, okay, I'll knock the fees down. The 21-point checklist is about the guy. It's about the guy. He did not disclose. So we can sell, and we don't, but you could sell a variable annuity after you hammer a variable annuity. You can sell an FIA after you hammer an FIA. You can sell AUM after you hammer AUM because we're not hammering an FIA, a VA, or AUM. We're hammering the fact that the guy did not disclose the negative stuff. He only told them about the positive stuff. So if you have an FIA, make sure you call ECA and say, Matt and Jerry, and say, listen, I've got an FIA here that I need to do a 21 on. What are the weaknesses of this product? Make sense? Oh, sorry about that, Jeff.
No, and you never want to compete on fees and spreads. That's never. What happens if you do that is there's a couple of things that can happen. One, it opens up a can of worms where they're going to ask you, okay, so what would your fee be? What would I pay you? And you guys get all twisted when they ask you a question like that, but I would tell you when I listen to tapes, not all the time, but 90% of the time, you invited the question. You're the one that brought it up. You're the one that went down that path, and then you act surprised and unsure of what to do when they go along with you and ask you, okay, so what should I be paying? What do you charge? What would be a reasonable fee? That's one thing that can happen.
Then what's the conversation, just so to kind of piggyback on that, so then what's happened to the true conversation we want to have at that point, which is about their guy? It's no longer about their guy. Who's it about? If you get into all of that, it's no longer about the guy. Who's it? Now they're judging not only their guy, they're judging you. That's a problem. I want them only judging their guy at the disclosure meeting. Do we, Jeff, ever mention ourselves at the 21-point checklist?
No, it's not about you. It's not about them or their product. It's about their advisor. And that's the epiphany that you have to have. That's when it starts working for you gangbusters. If it's not working for you gangbuster, it's probably because you're muddling it with these other things. Fees and spreads, what I can do, what you should be looking for. It's not what they should be looking for. It's not what I can do. It's not the problems with the product. It's the problem with their advisor. And when you talk fees and spreads and you get away from the advisor, when the market's up over 200% in the last 9 years, guess what they're going to say about that fee? It sucks, but it made me money, so I'm not going to ditch it. So when it stops making me money, maybe I'll revisit this, but until then, I'm going to keep it. So it's not going to work. It can only lead to bad things. It always has to be about their advisor. Same thing when we talk about a product like this. Just because we don't have a Morningstar doesn't mean we don't have a conversation about it. just my own personal take is I call a product like this kind of a gold turd. I mean, if somebody handed you a turd wrapped in gold foil, you'd still have what in your hand? A turd, right? So that's kind of what this is. It's a turd dressed up and wrapped in pretty paper. And companies design things like this to kind of, appease, I would say, but I don't even know if it's not to fool unsuspecting investors and advisors, because here's the problem with a product like that. Is this the best growth vehicle? If there's a 10% cap on it, is it the best growth vehicle? No, it's not. What is the best growth vehicle? Where's the best place to put your money in general if you wanted to grow your money? Where's the opportunity for the most growth? Yeah, the stock market, Wade. Everybody's getting in stocks. Is it the best safe vehicle? Or can you lose money with this? No. So what is the best safe vehicle? What would be the best safe vehicle? It's not the best growth vehicle. It's not the best safe vehicle. You got FIAs, anything that you cannot lose money with.
Okay, can I jump in there? I'm going to jump in there. I got two dough heads, guys, that say CDs. Why are CDs not the best safe vehicle, guys? Yeah, low return. Are FIAs guaranteed? Yes. Chris, are FIAs guaranteed? Yes. Which one's going to give you a higher rate of return, a CD or an FIA? So why would anybody, and guys, what's more liquid, a CD or an FIA? If you don't get this right, you need to go back and check out with FIAs with Jerry again. So if FIAs are more liquid than CDs, get a higher rate of return than CDs, and are guaranteed like CDs, why would a CD be the best place for guaranteed money? It would not. So sorry about that, Jeff.
Nope, that's okay. This product, it's not the best growth vehicle. It's not the best safe vehicle, but I guess the question that you have to stare down and kind of wrestle to the ground is, wouldn't this be something good for someone who's willing to take a little more risk for a little more gain? Because I think that's what advisors think. Well, it may not be the best growth vehicle, it may not be the best safe vehicle, but what about that guy who wants to be mostly safe and is willing to take a little more risk for a little more gain? Isn't this who that's for? And the answer is no, absolutely not. And here's why. Probably the best analogy that I could give you is the weather. So here in Minnesota, we get something called severe thunderstorms from time to time. And severe thunderstorm in Minnesota doesn't just mean rain. It means a lot of lightning typically. It means a lot of wind. And so when I get home after something like this, I'm probably going to have to chase down my gutter spouts because they blew away. I may have to track down some lawn furniture pillows that have blown away. And I may even have to pick up a few branches from some trees that blew down. The trees didn't blow down. The branches on the trees blew down. And so it might take me 15, 20 minutes to clean up after this thing. But do I really need to be afraid of a thunderstorm? Is a thunderstorm something I have to be scared of? No. It's nothing that I'm afraid of. I mean, we get 10 to 15 of these during the summer each and every year. So I don't enjoy it. I'm not looking forward to these things, but I'm not afraid of them. Nobody needs to be afraid of them. What we do need to be afraid of, though, is Hurricane Harvey. And we should all be afraid of something like that. Those kinds of storms we've all seen, they're life-threatening. And they can take years and sometimes even a lifetime to rebuild and recover from. And so we can't afford Hurricane Harvey. Fortunately, though, those kinds of storms, those kinds of hurricanes, they're outliers. They aren't supposed to happen but once in 100 years. Now, there's some debate about whether we as humans have adversely affected the climate and whether we should expect more Harveys going forward, but I'm not going to get into any of that. My point is, it's the big storms. It's the outliers that we have to be afraid of. Now, we talked a few weeks ago about how the market is a lot like the weather. So predictably, when we're talking about the market, we're going to encounter some severe thunderstorms from time to time. So what I mean by that is you're going to have some years where there's 6, 8, 10% losses. That happens. That's just a reality. And we don't like it when it happens, but we know it's part of the deal of investing, that it doesn't just go up. Sometimes it goes down. And that's part of what we have to live with. But here's the thing about those 6, 8, 10% losses. It's just a part of investing, and it doesn't take a long time to recover from them. On average, it takes about a year. I think that's why when you ask people how long, if your investment went down, would you want it, what's the most you'd want it to take before it came back up? And most people, 80% of the time, will say a year. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. I think our minds kind of reset annually, so a year makes a good kind of marker for us. But at the same time, that's really, if you have a 6, 8, 10% loss, chances are the market's bounced back the following year. It doesn't take that long a time to recover from those kinds of losses, and they're not something we have to be afraid of. We don't have to be afraid of the 6%, 8%, even 10% loss. What we do need to be afraid of is Hurricane Harvey. Those 30, 40, 50% downturns. Those kinds of losses can take years, and sometimes even a lifetime to recover from if it happens to you at the wrong time, if it happens to you when you're retired, if it happens to you when you're in your 60s. Those are the kinds of things we have to be afraid of. Those are the things that can really set us back, and again, we might not even recover. Now, fortunately, those are outliers. They aren't supposed to happen but once in 100 years. But now we talked a few weeks ago about how there is some debate about whether we as humans have adversely affected and artificially affected the market, and whether we should expect more and more of those Harveys in the market going forward. But here's the real point. Do these buffered 10% loss products, do they protect you from hurricanes? I mean, if the market goes down 30, 40, 50%, you're still going to lose 20, 30, 40%. Those products don't protect you from a hurricane. It's still going to take you years, maybe even a lifetime, to recover from that. That product protects you from the thunderstorms. But do you really need to be afraid of the thunderstorms, or do you need protection from the hurricanes? I mean, what you really need is protection from the hurricanes. That product does you no good when the hurricane hits. And it may even hurt you by limiting your upside as you try and recover. Remember, Jerry showed us a spreadsheet. And he said in the short run, that product's no good for you. And in the long run, that product's no good for you. Look what happens with that product, with the FIA, with a 52% cap. How does it do compared to that product on the other side? Over the last 20 years, there's no comparison. I mean, 410,000 and change in the FIA with the 52% cap, 239,000 in this product with the 10% cap, but the 10% buffer. It's because we had some hurricanes in there. It doesn't help you, and in fact, it hurts you because as you try and recover, your recovery, your upside, is capped. Now, here's the question. Is there anything that can protect you in a hurricane? And the answer is yeah. It's a 50-50 portfolio. I mean, the 50% that you have in the market, yeah, it's going to get beaten and battered just like everything else in the market. But that 50% that you have safe, it's weatherproof. It's like a concrete storm shelter. You can't get hurt in there. And that's why you have to have both. This is always going to outperform a product like that. But we still had that question, what do I suggest for someone who's willing to take a little more risk for a little more upside? A 60-40 portfolio. But would I ever recommend anything like the AXA Structured Capital? No, never. We've seen it doesn't help you, it only hurts you. We saw that with the spreadsheet, and now we know why. It's not the thunderstorms you have to be worried about. It's the hurricanes, and it's not going to help you in a hurricane. Okay? So that's the first thing that I've seen it come in. It's coming in a little bit more often. We're going to start to see a little bit more of it, and you have to help people to understand that that kind of a product isn't going to help them. It'll protect them against the thunderstorms. It will not protect them against the hurricanes, and it's the hurricanes you have to be afraid of. Not only will it not help you in a hurricane, like we talked, it hurts you as you try to recover because your upside is capped. All right, next thing that I see every once in a while that guys tend to struggle with a little bit. Sometimes I get this question a lot. People will say, I'm talking about this variable annuity, but they have this income rider, they have this withdrawal benefit. And so does that ever come up? How do you deal with somebody who has this income rider or this withdrawal benefit? So the first question is, does that ever come up? Do clients ever bring that up? And the answer is, yeah, they do bring it up, and they bring it up fairly often if they have it. So they say, yeah, I mean, the variable annuity sucks, but at least I've got this income benefit. Now, if this is something that comes up, and it comes up fairly often, what should we do? Should we just wait until they bring it up and react to it? Or should we bring it up first if we know that it may come up and there's a good chance that it'll come up? I mean, one of the cornerstones of the 5Q system is overcome objections before they become objections. So you're all getting it right. We need to bring it up first. Okay, so what I want to do is kind of talk to you about how do you bring that up. Now, the key to talking about variable annuities is always the insurance expense. So when you go back to the tutorial and you go back to the VA fees section, you have to have success talking about the insurance expense. You have to have that nailed down. That's the key to everything. Nothing that I'm going to talk to you about here in the next few minutes is going to help you if you can't first do that. That's the foundation, the key to everything. Anything we're about to talk about won't work unless you lay this foundation first. And if you do a good job of talking about the insurance expense when you talk about the variable annuity fees, it's that conversation that you already had that sets up the conversation that you want to have about the income rider or the withdrawal benefit. So if you do the variable annuity fee script right, what are they going to tell you about the insurance expense? Well, what they're going to tell you is that, wow, that's life insurance that I didn't even want. And not only is it life insurance, it's expensive life insurance. And not only is it expensive, it's the one kind that's taxable versus tax-free. And not only is it life insurance that I didn't want, that's expensive and taxable, but I have to pay for that insurance whether I get a death benefit or not. In fact, this is a really raw deal because the expense of the insurance goes up even as the benefit goes down. And here's the key, guys. And my advisor didn't tell me about it because he wanted to make more money selling me those funds inside the variable annuity as opposed to outside the variable annuity. So that's what they're saying. This is a really raw deal, and my advisor didn't explain it to me because he wanted to make more money selling me that fund inside the annuity wrapper so he could make more money as opposed to outside the annuity wrapper. They have to say that first. They have to understand the insurance expense. They have to understand that they're paying for a death benefit or life insurance that they didn't want. Now, once they say that, again, we can't tell them that. Why can't we tell them that? Why can't we just tell them, hey, this is a really bad deal? It's really expensive life insurance that you probably don't even want. It's taxable and the expense goes up, even as the benefit goes down, and your guy didn't tell you about it because he wanted to make more money. Why exactly, Wade? Because we have a motive to go ahead and say that. If we say it, are they going to believe anything we say? No. So who has to say it? Who has to say it? They do. That's exactly right. They have to say it. But once they say that, yeah, why didn't he cover this with you? Well, I'm not sure. Well, again, if they have you on the hook for this additional expense, what can they maybe do for him? Pay him more. Right. And so why didn't he explain it? Well, because he wanted to make more money for himself. He just wanted me to buy it so he could make more money. He doesn't care about me. He just cares about himself. Now, at that point, I can say something like, it would appear so. Now, some people tell me that they would rather have bought the funds outside of the variable annuity, but it's a done deal. You have it. It's done. And at least they have the income benefit. And so you've got an income benefit, so should we look at that? What do they say? Sure, we should look at it. Now you have this withdrawal benefit, and it's neither here nor there. The withdrawal benefit doesn't really help you if the market goes up, because then you're just withdrawing your own money, and that's neither here nor there. But that's not why you have this withdrawal benefit. Why did you have this withdrawal benefit? What is it you wanted to make sure, just in case what happened? We're worried if the market went up. It's not a big deal. It's neither here nor there. But we want it just in case the market does what? Yep, goes down. And so let's say that happens. Let's say you had $100,000 with a 5% withdrawal benefit. How much could you withdraw from that portfolio? What's 5% of $100,000? They're going to say, well, it's $5,000. Right. Now, let me ask you a question. What happens if you take out more than $5,000? And let me help you out here for a second. Nothing if the market's up. If you wanted to take out more than $5,000 when the account was up, could you do that? Yeah, absolutely you could. That's not a problem, because you're just pulling out your own money. But again, what if the market was down? What would happen if you took out more than $5,000 when the market was down? Well, you don't really want to do that because it crashes the guarantees. But now you're not going to do that, right? If the market fell, if your $100,000 fell to, let's just say, to make the math easy, $50,000, could you still take out the $5,000 per year? And what are they going to say? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely you can. You still get the $5,000 per year, even if the market falls, like, even if it fell 50%, you would still get that, and that's why you have it. And how many years would you be able to withdraw $5,000 from $50,000 before the account value was zero? If you withdrew $5,000 a year from $50,000, how many years before it was gone? 10. Yeah, that's exactly right. Then what happens? Do you still get the $5,000 a year? Yep, you guys are all getting it right. Absolutely, you get the $5,000 per year, even if that account value falls to zero. Now let me ask you a question. Do you know what prorata means? And whether they say yes or they say no, I'm going to explain to them that it's proportional. So let's say you're going ahead and you're taking that $5,000 a year for 10 years. At $5,000 a year for 10 years, how much have you taken out? 5,000 times 10, $50,000. That's exactly right. So you've taken out $50,000 and then you die. Now remember, we talked about that death benefit. We said that you had that there, and that if you died, your wife would get whatever the account grew to or whatever you started with, whichever is more. Now if the account falls, which is more? What it fell to or what you started with? Yeah, what you started with. And so you would think your wife gets $100,000 because that's what you started with, minus the $50,000 that you already took out and spent. So how much should she get? How much should she get if you $50,000? But because the withdrawals are pro rata, the company's going to say you took out $50,000 from a variable annuity that had fallen to $50,000. You spent 100% of the actual account value. Now you still get the $5,000 per year. We talked about that. You still get that even though the account value is zero. But they reduced your death benefit proportionately, pro rata, which means if you spent 100% of the account value and they reduced your death benefit pro rata, if you took out 100% of the account value, they reduced your death benefit by how much if they did it proportionally? 100%. That's right. So what's the death benefit at that point? Zero. Yeah, it's zero, which that would be fine. But do you think they stopped charging you for it? No. Now, was that explained to you? Did he explain to you that once you start activating this withdrawal benefit, it crashes your death benefit? Did he go over that with you? Why didn't he go over it with you? Again, we're shifting the focus from the fact that, think of it this way, guys, breaking role play for a second. The company can't afford to give you a living benefit and a death benefit. So if you don't use the living benefit, they're going to give you the death benefit. If you use the living benefit, they can't afford to give you the death benefit. They can't give you both. But do they tell you you can't use both even though they're charging you for both? No, they don't. And why don't they? Because most people, if they knew that, what would they do? They didn't want the life insurance to start with. And now they're finding out that, hey, he didn't, I thought I had this living benefit that was going to work, and I guess it is going to work, but that's another thing he didn't explain. Why? Because he knew if I bought it, or if he knew that if he explained it, I wouldn't have bought it. And then he wouldn't have made the money off the sale. He was looking out for who? Him or me? He was looking out for himself. Now again, we have to take the focus off the income and on to the other advisor. And that only works if you're good at the original VA script. So make sure you're good at that original VA script. If you're not good at that, there's nothing that we just covered here that's going to help you. Everything is predicated on, we're stacking disclosure problem on top of disclosure problem. We're stacking them on top of each other. You have to have that firm foundation for everything else to work. You have to be laser focused on disclosure. Okay?
The other thing, Jeff, that they can talk about is how much this thing costs per year between the rider for the GWB and the life insurance they didn't know they bought. That is, guys, is that hundreds or is that thousands or tens of thousands of dollars over the years?
Yeah, it's tens of thousands of
dollars. On 100,000, what are you talking about there?
Oh, at least $1,000. These riders cost about 1% would be typical.
Plus then the regular rider.
Mm-hmm. And that brings up a good point. So when you're entering information into the 21-point checklist software, so in step 5, it's going to ask you, well, what's the account value of the variable annuities? And so you get that information right off the statements. You look at the statements, it tells you the account values, you put that number in the box. If they have more than one variable annuity, you'd add them together and put that number in the box. So we know the account value. Then it's going to ask you, well, what are the total expenses? So when you get a Morningstar averages report from me, it's going to tell you, there's going to be a column there that will tell you what the total expenses are. And so you're just going to take that number that's on that averages report and put it in that box. But what if they have riders? Because that average that I give you is just the insurance expense. So let's say it says the insurance expense is 2.1, because that's going to include the M&E plus the manager's fees. So the M&E might be 1.4, 80 basis points for the manager fees, for a total of, well, let's call it 2.2. 2.2%. If they have a 1% rider, what would I put in that box? Income rider. I wouldn't just put 2.2. I'd add the rider costs onto, that's right, I would put 3.2% in that box. The reason that it's not on the Morningstar average report is because those riders are optional, and Morningstar has no idea whether or not they have those riders. All Morningstar is telling you is, regardless, if they have 0 riders, there's still that 2.2% cost. That's baseline, that's given. But it could very well be higher depending on the riders that they have on that contract. So if you know they have the rider, go ahead and add that to the cost in step 5.
So how much would they be paying on $100,000 over 10 years? If the account didn't even grow. Yeah, $32,000. Would they be okay with paying $32,000 for the income rider? Knowing people that I've talked to, guess how many, once they knew that they were paying 32 grand for that, would be willing to pay, that would be okay for the income rider? They'd think what? What do you think most people would think? Well, heck, if I did what? Come on, guys, put yourself in their shoes. What would you say? Yeah, if I just banked it. What if I just took that 32 grand and put that into an investment and invested that instead of sending, putting it down to, I mean, so you got to help them walk through this. If you just say, hey, how would you like a 5% guarantee? What will everybody say? Heck yeah. But once you walk them through what that costs, that 5% guarantee costs 32 grand a year, that's just on 100. If it's on 300, now what are we up to? It's almost $100,000 they're paying for over 10 years. Yeah, would you like a 5% guarantee for $100,000? How many people are going to say yes to that $300,000 account? None. Yeah, exactly, guys. None. So, and again, is it about the fees? So why do you think you're, so if you could have got all these same accounts without all of these fees, would you have done it? Yeah. Would it, how about if I walked down the street and asked 100 people? How many people would want those fees? Probably none. Yeah, so why do you think insurance companies love to sell these guarantees, this life insurance? So why do you think your guy sold it to you? See, it's back to the guy.
Yeah, it's always back to the guy. And the point is, there's not an investment out there that we should be afraid of running through the 21-point checklist. I get a little discouraged sometimes when I say, I don't know, Jeff, these people are really buttoned up. I don't think there's anything that we can talk about with their investments.
So let me ask you a question, Jeff, to the guys. Guys, do you really think that Jeff and I would have, you put any investment in front of Jeff or myself with a client, what investment are we going to lose on? I want everybody to answer this. What do you think investment, you put Jeff and I in front of any investment out there, how many, so we have one answer to that. You know what, you guys, you got to, I got about 10. Everybody answer that. Okay, so here's the great thing. Guess what you have available to you? Jeff or myself, because you all agree Jeff and I are not going to lose on any investment you put in front of us. That client's going to discover, I wasn't told this, and the reason I wasn't told this is because that guy wanted to make a lot of money, and that guy is done. So you have Jeff or myself available to help you. So do you understand why Jeff gets discouraged when you think, oh, I can't do anything with this, these people are buttoned up?
Yeah, there's nothing we should be afraid of. I mean, we just looked at two of the things that are probably the most common things that people say, well, I'm protected. I have this buffer. I have this income rider. Those are the things that trip you up a little bit. And I'll tell you, there's nothing out there there's no such thing as the perfect investment. There are always problems with every investment, and I guarantee you the better part of it is none of those problems were disclosed. And so we can use the 21-point checklist on any investment that's out there. All right. We talked, now final topic, we talked last week about the accounting firm, Deloitte. And they said that there are big changes that are coming on the horizon in this industry. And now we all know that there are regulatory changes, that the environment is changing. We've been through the 151 and the SEC trying to call indexed annuities securities. We're going through the DOL, and I'm not sure, how the DOL is all going to shake out. I mean, I'm hearing things that, it's going to be delayed, it's not going to be delayed, it's going to be changed, it is going to be changed, but not all that much. I'm hearing things all over the board. But regardless, we know that the regulatory environment has been changing and probably will continue to change over time. But Deloitte didn't even talk about that. They said, we're not even looking at regulation. What we're talking about is the fact that people are changing, that clients, their expectations, and the way we approach those people and meet with them is changing as well. And if these changes continue on the trend that they're going, it's going to completely alter the industry. And only those who change with it will survive. So forget about the DOL, forget about regulation. Millennials and baby boomers are different than the baby boomers are different than the greatest generation. Millennials are different than baby boomers. And we're almost the greatest generation. My goodness, guys, when I watch the news and they're talking about people, they're showcasing people that were in Pearl Harbor when the Japanese bombed it. These people they're in their late 90s. They're over 100 years old, many of them. We've come to the end of that. We're dealing with a whole nother animal now. And we may end up dealing with a whole nother animal when they start passing that money on to their kids. And if you're not on the cutting edge of that, if you don't understand that, you're not changing the way that you approach these people and talk to these people, you're not going to make it. And the reality is most people aren't going to make it. Most advisors aren't going to make it. But you guys are uniquely positioned to not only survive, but to thrive, because you have the 21-point checklist. You have something, you have something that's timeless. You have something that resonates with everybody. Everybody, not just the greatest generation, but baby boomers and millennials behind them just want things to be transparent. They want people to be straight. Now, I suppose if that ever changes, then we might be in trouble. But until then, until people just want to be told the truth, we're in a position to not only just survive, but to thrive, because we're unique in the sense that we cover things that nobody else talks about. And so when you have the 21-point checklist, you're uniquely positioned to weather anything that might be coming down the pike, regulatory or not. And we talked about that last week. But the thing, and so if you're not sure about that, or you didn't get to hear that call, go back and make sure that you're listening to that. But I guess what I wanted to point out this week was this: not only do you have the 21-point checklist, but you also have each other. And you guys are all out there doing the same meeting that everybody else is doing all the time, all over the country, and we're getting that feedback. And so we're able to adapt and help each other to understand what's going on in the industry and adapt the 21-point checklist to that as things happen. You're not going through things alone. You have each other. And taping your meetings is what allows all of us to learn from each other, not just to get better at our meetings, but also to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of what's happening in the industry, that we're not going to get passed by. But none of this will help you if you're not doing it, if you're not using it. And so here's what I want to make sure that you guys are doing. When you come on board, what we want you to do is go back and do 21 lights with all of your current clients. Now, why do we want you to do 21 lights with your current clients? Because if you really believed in the value of the 21, who would you want to have this? Who would you not want to be left behind? Your current clients. And so the 21 light is a great way to get that information to your current clients and not having to feel like, hey, I'm going to change my practice and be this really good advisor going forward, but all the people that I met with over the last 10 years, screw them. No, we're going to go back and we're going to help them first. And the great thing about that is when you do that, you're also getting practice on those 21 light topics so that when you do start meeting with other prospects, you don't have that deer in the headlights. You're not feeling like, wow, now I'm going to do this thing and I'm not sure I'm ready. You're going to know that you're ready because you will have already practiced on who? All of your current clients. And even if that's only 10 or 12 people, that's fine. Go back and do it with those 10 or 12. There's still value in it. But here's where I start to get a little bit afraid for you guys. Some of you won't go back and do 21 lights with your current clients. And if you won't do that, what's the likelihood that you're going to do the full checklist with complete strangers? Not very high. Now, I think that you think, well, okay, well, I'm going to learn some of this. I'm going to do a little bit of mine. I'm going to do a little bit of theirs. And I'm just going to tell you straight out, that doesn't work. Doing a little bit of yours and doing a little bit of ours isn't going to work. In fact, it's probably going to be worse for you because now you've watered down yours, which probably worked a little, but now the watered down version probably isn't going to work all that well. It probably never worked that well, but at least it worked a little. But it isn't even going to work a little if you water it down and do some of ours. And then ours isn't going to work because you've watered down ours. You're giving people a watered down version of something. You'd be better off giving 100% of yours or 100% of ours. I'll tell you, with a 1,000% confidence, because we have 50,000 tapes to prove it, that ours will do better, but not if you're going to water it down. Don't water it down. Do the 21 lights with your current clients. If you're afraid to do it with your current clients, there's no way you're going to convince me that you're not going to be afraid to do it with strangers. Go back, do it with your current clients. I always tell people those are preseason games. That's an opportunity for you to figure out what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong in games that don't count.
Can I jump in there?
Can't hurt you. Sure.
Yeah. Because if a team skipped the whole preseason, I don't want to injure my players, so I'm just going to skip the whole preseason and jump into the regular season. Answer this, how many games before they get into the groove? How many games before they get into the groove? If they just skip the whole preseason? Yeah, I would agree with that, Nicholas. 4 or 5. Everybody's saying 4 or 5 or many. Yeah, so here's the thing. If it takes you 4, 5, 6 games to get into the groove of things with this, with the 21-point checklist with strange people, guess how many thousands of dollars that's cost you? It's cost you thousands of dollars. Why would you do that? That's, you know what? And then the real fear is what, Jeff? If they just jump in with their spending thousands of dollars to do it, and then it doesn't work for them because they don't have the skills, what do? Say, oh, that's a learning lesson, then jump in and do more marketing, or what's the danger then?
No, you hide in your cave and you lick your wounds and you're afraid to come out. You're afraid to try again, and we know that, and so we tell you it doesn't have to be that way. There's an easy way to do this. Go back to your current clients. There's nothing on the line. You have to get them the information anyway. Why not get the practice? It's free. And a lot of times, I'll tell you, most times you find money. But even if you didn't, you still got experience and confidence that will carry you into the regular season. Now, sometimes I hear people say, well, we always tell you guys it takes how many hours to learn this? How many hours does it take to learn 100? That's exactly right. It takes 100 hours to learn. And what if you wait? What if you say, well, I'm just gonna, I don't need to change now. I'll change, when I start seeing more of those baby boomers. I'll change when I start losing. Then I'll spend the 100 hours. For now, I'm just going to do a little of this and a little of mine and a little of yours. I'll dedicate myself and really dive in and do yours when it becomes obvious that it's necessary, that I absolutely have to. What if you wait? Well, here's what happens if you wait. It's probably too late. People are making judgments about you now. People that you haven't even met with are talking to people that you have, or telling their kids about you. People are making judgments about you now. And if you don't change now, you run the risk of being too late. So make sure when you come on board, you came on board to learn a system that was going to work to turn plate lickers and tire kickers into people that would move all their money to you. You came on board to make sure that you could move money in any kind of market. There's no reason to wait. You all came on board because you wanted to start making money, I presume, now. Not later, but now. So get in there, make the changes, do the hard work up front, and get going with it now. You have all the skills you need to be able to at least start the 21 Lite with your existing clients. So let's make sure we're doing that right away. We're doing that now. Because when you've mastered the crib notes and the motive, and you're doing your 15-minute drills, and you're practicing the GOTS, you're going through the 5-minute money makers, and you're really using those breakdowns to improve your meetings, that's when you bring on every client you want, regardless of what the market is doing, regardless of what your marketing is doing. That's the ticket, that's the thing that's going to give you success now and carry over into the future, no matter what happens, whether there's DOL or not. The industry's changing, and this is the only way you have of changing with it. So let's make sure we're out there doing what we need to do and not making excuses for why we can't or won't. All right. So that's it for today. If you guys have any questions about anything, we're here this week, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys.